what kind of kept you going through the times where, like you're going through a day and you're like, yeah, this is what I planned. Things are not kind of going as I expected. I'm not feeling too great about that. Like, how did you kind of uh, get through that when you're not feeling as motivated?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, there have been many days like that. It's definitely not all rainbows and sunshines, and there is a lot of days, especially as an entrepreneur, when you're faced with difficult decisions and also uncertainty. Um, I think for me, the biggest life lesson was through my experience with cancer. I think I always revert back to that, and I think, well,
Yeah.
that was a period of uncertainty that I had. I didn't know if I would make it out alive or not. And I did, I was lucky enough to make it through that experience. But any day that I have that is filled with uncertainty or a bad day, quote unquote, is uncomparable to, that period in my life. And so I think putting
Yeah.
things into perspective, not only to yourself, but just in the general scheme of things, and saying that, there is a lot of things going on around the world right now. Is this really as bad as it seems? Or could I turn it around? And could I turn it around and make it work in my favor? And I think that's really the type of mindset that I started adopting. And there's always a way to make something better out of something that was worse. And it's just a matter of mindset. Obviously, better, it's easier said than done for sure. But it's something that
Mhm.
comes with years, comes with going through that experience and really just working at it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine, what going through cancer must have been like, but seems like a really kind of life changing experience. And it seems like you've gotten a lot of good perspective from it. And I like what you said about, is this really as bad as it seems? Because sometimes we can make these problems so big in our heads, right? So it's really
Exactly.
good perspective.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, it's exactly like that. I mean, I think it's um, we're often our worst critics, and we might be hard on
Mhm.
ourselves, right? And so when something doesn't work out, we're quick to say, "Oh my God, like why didn't it work?" It's terrible, and we start feeling worse about the situation. But I think if we kind of just um, step aside and kind of like, if I can say, remove ourselves from that and then take a look at things objectively.
In that kind of accelerator program, had funding from the government, you had support from the Mars kind of incubator and their mentorship. And I believe that you were competing for a $1 million prize, right, for your company?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so that seems like really intense and hard, and I honestly can't even imagine how that feels like, but kind of seems like a dream come true too. Can you tell me a little bit about that experience and what your journey was like within the 30-month, or I know it was extended, but that period of time in that competing period?
Absolutely. I mean, I was just over the moon really, because I was more focused on the fact that I get to create a company and it's financially supported than the competition. I know it's a competition, but as time went, all of the women in clean tech, we're six. We formed a really close bond. I mean, we created a WhatsApp group. We kept in touch with each other because a lot of the challenges that we were facing were so similar. And so we were able to help each other. So as time went, it didn't really seem like a competition. It's just felt like a cohort, a group, and that we were there for each other, and that Mars and the federal government were generously supporting us in building out our companies. So a few lessons from that for me were really focused on business development, learning more business acumen, also understanding how to uh, create and fund a company. And so there were a lot of steps involved. from beginning until end. So looking at it from a technology point of view, there are items called, the value proposition, your product market fit. Does anyone want your technology? Is it needed in the market? Are there customers? Who are the customer groups? And then how are you going to pitch that to investors? What does the legal structure of your company look like? How are you going to finance it through private and public funds? And then also supporting us in creating a solid network within the Canadian and US clean tech ecosystem as well, to help us have those conversations as we grow our company. And so even though we were in this competition, a really long period of competition, there were a lot of support that was provided in that time. And for me, the real prize was that, the $1 million would have been the cherry on the top, but the real prize is that experience. And each year that that we continued on in the incubator program, there were a generous amount of funds still being pulled into our company. So not only through Mars, but over the last years of running Dispersa, I've also secured with my team generous support from provincial and other federal entities as well. And so to date, we've already been funded over $1.5 million. And right now we're in our investment round of $2 million. And so we're on track to securing that next tranche of funding.
Many people lifetime at a really young age, right? And one of those achievements is discovering a new strain of bacteria and having it named after you. But can you kind of walk me through the feeling or the moment where you realized that you made a discovery and what that experience or emotion was like?
Yeah, it's really sweet of you. Definitely not. I have many more years ahead and many more things to learn. But yeah, I guess the experience of the research that was part of the Science Fair project, what it started off was the purpose was not to find microbes. It was not to find a novel strain, or the real purpose was, how could we use these tiny microbes that we can't even see with our eyes? They produce these soapy compounds, which I thought was insane. I'm like, how is this thing that we don't see producing things externally that we can use in real life? It blew my mind, because I can't even see it with my eyes when it's producing it. I need to put under a microscope, or I need to actually produce it in a batch. And so that's really what motivated me to go that stream. And the objective of that project was really to identify local strains in Quebec, in Montreal specifically, that can produce this molecule that I called, that I mentioned, biosurfactants. So I basically went, like you said, to my backyard. This is the easiest place to get soil, right? And these microbes are found in soil culture. So I went to my backyard, got some soil samples, went near the St. Lawrence River, got a few other samples, and then I basically came into the lab with bags of soil, and then creating different dilutions and basically investigating the various microbial cultures that are in those soil samples. And as I was doing that, I found what I was looking for, which was different types of microbes producing that compound that I mentioned. But I brought in my mentor, Eric Desiel, and he took a look at the strains, and he said, can you do like this specific test, basically? And so I did that test, and I showed him the results, and he said, you know what, that's actually really interesting. We haven't seen something like that before. And clearly for me, I'm still learning. So I learned a lot from him, who is the expert in this field. And so we decided that it would be worthwhile to look into the genetic code of these microbes, which we did through a partnership with McGill. And then through that, we saw that there was actually a lot of differences in this particular bacteria than the other ones that I was aiming for. And that's really what uh, ended up in that type of discovery. And it was not at all what I was expecting from the start, and not the purpose either after the project, but it was still a cool thing.